Hello. So I want to talk about pirate flags today. Um, Been thinking about this for a while, actually. Play games with ships. I've mentioned that before. Um, but more than anything, where did this idea come from? Now, I found, or I heard, one reference years ago that pirate flags. They would fly a quarantine flag, and it would keep the navy away from them, and at the same time it would draw ships to them because yes, it's quarantine, but at the same time there is sort of a general rule. You see someone in trouble at sea, you find out if you can help. So you at least draw close enough to shout to them, and so it was might have been a way to lure people in. Now I haven't been able to confirm that. Um, Looked up quarantine flags. Apparently, yes, they did have quarantine flags for ships to warn people. They were all different colors, and some of it was different nations would use different colors. At one point, they were using different colors for different diseases. So we think we have this disease, we'll fly this color flag, and if someone can help us, they'll know in advance. There was never really one set rule used internationally, so it was so the idea that a black flag might have stood for quarantine is possible. At one point at least. Not entirely. Or not always, we should say. So, where does that lead us to? Okay, there was known that for a while pirates would fly a black flag, which meant we'll show quarter if you surrender. And quarter was basically, we're going to come, we're going to through your stuff, we're going to take your money, but we won't hurt anyone. And we'll leave you enough food to get to port. Because, as I said, you don't just leave someone adrift at sea without food. That's bad. Whether it's you believe in karma, whether you believe in fate, good luck, whatever, it's just a horrible thing to leave someone adrift without food. So, fly the black flag, you surrender, things will go well for you, you'll just be a little more poor. Um, if you don't respond within, 5 minutes, and by respond, you had your flags, you could fly up a yes, we surrender signal. Um, then they changed it to a red flag. And red flag means no rules. We come, we're going to slaughter everyone, we're going to take everything. And so that was done for a while. Um, Again, this sort of goes back to the question about the quarantine, though, because from what I saw, some quarantine flags were black. So flying a black flag as a warning that we will show quarter if you surrender, as opposed to flying a black flag to say we've got a disease on board, be careful. How did that work out? And my answer to that is it's probably dealt with a time period. And from what looking things up online, from what I saw, I couldn't really tell a time period for the different kinds of flags being used. So it's possible. Like I said, it would take more research than you can do online. Now, golden age of piracy, according to one site, was from around the 1650s to 1730s. That said, yeah, pirates existed long before then. Basically, as long as we had ships. Uh, Difference being, in the old and ancient times, it was you sail as close as you could to someone, then you jump in and you start killing them. So the idea of giving quarter probably didn't exist back then. No cannons, so it's questionable. Was it more or less deadly before cannons were invented? Because with cannons, you get at least fire a warning shot and give them a chance to surrender, whereas without cannons, you've got to raid them. Otherwise, they're going to try to escape. Giving them any kind of warning, whereas your only threat is we can kill you if we get close enough, doesn't work. So I would assume that ancient times there was, piracy was a bit more bloody than it was in times, the golden age of piracy, simply because they didn't have the guns, and so their options for allowing surrender were a lot less. But I'm getting off topic, which is pirate flags. Now, the earliest book which describes pirate flags was called, let me see here, A General History of the Robberies and Murders of the Most Notorious Pirates. It was published in 1724 by Captain Charles Johnson. Some people think that was a pen name, and they ascribe the book to more famous writers of the time. Not going to go down that. One question about that was, so from what I can find out about it, most people think that they sort of romanticize things a little bit more than they should have. So this wasn't necessarily a history so much as we're going to take real life people and build them up more possible. Another interesting thing about this is the first actual pirate flag, what we would call a modern day pirate flag, a Jolly Roger, if you will, was flown by a man named Edward Lowe. And interesting thing here, he was born 1690 in Westminster. Eventually got a job sailing a ship. In 1722, he mutinied, failed. For reasons unknown, they didn't arrest him right away. When mutiny was a death offense, but they didn't arrest him right away. So the next day, he and his mutineers managed to capture another ship and started becoming pirates. And so he flew what is commonly thought to be the first pirate, or the first Jolly Roger at least. Picture of a skeleton holding an hourglass in one hand and a spear going through a heart in the next. The heart's just floating there. It's not going through a person's heart. It's just, there's his heart and he's stabbing it. A lot of symbolism here. Couldn't really find any good definition of what the symbolism stood for. But that was often by many people, that's considered to be the first Jolly Roger, at least. Not necessarily the first pirate flag, but the first Jolly Roger. And I think, this is interesting because again, that would have been in 1722 when he first mutinied and then stole the ship. And this book, which talks about pirates and describes their flags, was written in 1724. So between his mutiny and this book being written, a bunch of pirates just started flying their own flags. And one thing of interest here was that the flags, the concept of flying your own flag was sort of new. And so what's really happening here is he's pretty much declaring himself his own country. So standard rules don't apply to me. I'm my own country. I make my own rules. And that's sort of where they went with, again, there was belief in karma, stuff like that. So to some extent, pirates were still nice. But then we start also in with Blackbeard and other pirates who it's like, no, rules don't apply to us. So this is, like I said, the golden age of pirates started in 1650, apparently, according to most sources. The notorious age of pirates. The pirate where, or the age where we start getting these notorious pirates, pretty much started with Edward Lowe. And this idea that they're not going to play by the rules as much as they did in the past started with him. And that's sort of where, along with the Jolly Roger, that's was a part of it. We are our own nation to some extent. And so therefore, your rules don't apply to us. Only last thing to mention, where does the term Jolly Roger come from? So I've seen, no one really knows. I've seen two theories posted. One is that the pirates nicknamed the skeleton on the flag Roger, and then, as it blows in the wind, it looks like he's dancing or whatever, so they started calling him Jolly Roger. And some sources say that was actually Edward Lowe's men who started that. Others say it was someone else. Not sure. The other, I would say slightly less likely, is some people say it comes from the French. Jolie Rouge, the happy red. Red being the color of blood, supposedly. So we're murderous pilots. Happy Rouge. Now the thing about that would be most, from what I learned in French, most French adverbs come after the noun. So it wouldn't be la jolie rouge, it would be la rouge jolie. So that's one reason I would question that one partially. It is possible they called it la rouge jolie, and then when it moved over, when English started saying it, they changed it to Jolly Roger just because it was more convenient and more English sounding. So it's still a possibility. It's just less likely than they nicknamed him Roger and started calling him Jolly Roger. So that's it. Like I said, this is, why a skull and crossbones? And again, the crossbones actually didn't come for a while. A lot of them, it was the skull and the hourglass was used a lot. Possibly the hourglass sort of looked like an X, and so therefore people started doing crossbones later. Don't know for sure. But that's it. Where did this flag come from? Was it a quarantine flag? Again, unsure on all of that. From everything I studied, I couldn't verify or discount any of the rumors I heard about it. So it's possible it was a quarantine flag. Possible it wasn't. That's Pirate Flags. Have a nice day. And out.